What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel, and in today's video I want to address pitch types within MLB The Show, and I wanted to show you guys that there is a pretty efficient way to tell what each type of pitch does within the game, because you guys may have been in franchise mode or various different modes and wondered, especially if you are newer to MLB, newer to baseball in general, like I was when I first started with MLB The Show. There might be a way to determine what each pitch does. You may have been wondering that. I mean, when you go through your pitchers, everybody's going to have a different variety of pitches. You can see in the top right corner, Mitch Keller on my team, for example, has a four-seam fastball, a slider, a curveball, a circle change, but I might go to a different pitcher like JT Brubaker, and he's got a slider, a sinker, a four-seam fastball, a curveball, and a circle change. And all of these pitches do something different. So outside of going and actively researching what each type of pitch does and how they're thrown and all of the various different information that I'm sure you can find out there on the internet, there is actually a very direct and effective way to tell what each pitch does within the game, and that's not actually going to be going into the game and utilizing them. I mean, you can do that through trial and error and figure out what they do actively by utilizing them within the game, but there's actually a very direct way to go and have a description presented to you of what each pitch is actually supposed to do. So in order to access this, we're going to have to go back to the main menu, and this is essentially through Road to the Show or creating one of your players. So I'm actually going to go to the top left-hand corner of the main menu here. You can see it highlighted on my profile up there, and I'm going to go to my player. Now, when I go here, I'm then going to want to go to my loadout and click on the loadout, and right now I have a starting pitcher selected. So this is where you want to get to first and foremost. So if you do not already have a loadout with a starting pitcher, you're going to want to create a new loadout. And so all you have to do is press R1 or L1. If you don't have one, it's going to let you add an additional one. So we'll create a new loadout. You know, we can just call this one loadout. That's fine. And now we can see up at the top that we have that loadout. If you press R1, you'll then be able to scroll over to it. And if I pressed R1 again, it would allow me to create another new loadout. Nonetheless, though, what you're going to be looking to do here is make this loadout a starting pitcher. So I'm just going to add one of these starting pitcher traits, doesn't matter which one, and this is, like I said, the screen that you're going to want to get to, and that's how you get to it. And so, in order to tell what each pitch actually does, you can see that from the pitch selection here. So what all of these are on the right side of the screen are pitch selections. So you have the ability as a Road to the Show player, as a created player, to pick which pitches you want. It's not like previous years, and keep in mind, we're on MLB The Show 22, so this is a unique way of doing things. I don't think that it was actually set up this way in the previous game. I think you had to predetermine before you went into your Road to the Show which pitches you wanted to start with, and through training you could add and subtract pitches. Now on MLB The Show 22, we can select our pitches at any time. I can change this four-seam to a two-seam. I can change this two-seam to a cutter, and I can do that at any point throughout my Road to the Show because all this is a loadout. And you may have seen right there on the screen when I go to select a type of a pitch, it is going to give you a description of what that pitch does, and it's going to show you your stats below that. Nonetheless, this is the tip that we're getting to today. If you have ever wondered what all these different pitches do, or you want more information on what each pitch does, you can get all of that information on every single pitch type within the game from this screen. And on top of that, it's going to give you a description, but it's also going to show you how the ball is held and thrown. So we can see on the left side here, for example, before we even get into the description, that these balls are thrown in a different way. You can see the way that the ball is being held for a cutter as opposed to a four-seam fastball or a two-seam fastball, a running fastball, a slider. The hand positioning changes. You can see that the fingers change in the way that they're holding it versus a slurve or a curve versus a splitter or a fork ball, and then you have a change up, a Vulcan change, which is held differently, a knuckleball. You can actually see the hand placement on the ball and the way that it is held whenever it is thrown. So that right there in itself gives you some information on how these pitches are thrown. I never played baseball. I didn't know anything about baseball until my friends got me into MLB The Show. So I had no idea how you hold a certain ball in order to throw it. And I think that's pretty useful information to have and pretty interesting information to have available to you, to know that this is why this ball has this type of an action, because it's held this way and thrown a specific type of way. Now, the other thing that you're getting here before we even go to the actual verbal information on the screen is you get a pitch trajectory. So you're automatically seeing here what the expected trajectory of each of these pitch types are. So you can see with the sweeping curve, it starts with the downward motion and sweeps over to the side. You can see that in comparison to other pitches, a knuckle curve, more of just kind of a direct type of a curveball in general, a very downward sloping motion versus fastballs. There's all types of different essentially fastballs here between your four seam, your two seam, your running fastball, your cutter, and they all have a slightly different action, and there's a different goal to throwing those pitches. You can get that by simply seeing the trajectory that it is showing you for all of these various pitches, and that as well is very cool information to have, because that allows me to determine what type of pitches I want to have, because, you know, maybe I want a pitcher that has a lot of downward action, or maybe I want a pitcher that has a lot of horizontal action, or maybe I want a pitcher that has some type of wild action where it's not necessarily one thing or another, like circle change. You can see it has that kind of combination of the two. Or maybe you go to a slurve, for example, which has the sideways and downward action combined. Nonetheless, it is a ton of valuable information that you're getting, and we've only covered the way that the ball is held so far and the trajectory that you're getting on the screen. Beyond that, again, before we ever even get into the written information, it is also extremely helpful because you're going to get a comparison between two pitch types. Now, I know my screen is my face is kind of covering the top right hand corner, but nonetheless, you're getting all the information you need. We're not really technically covering anything up here. You're going to be able to compare pitches. So let's say I'm deciding between a cutter and a slider, and I want to compare which one's better for me, which one has a different type of action, and so on and so forth. You're getting an actual comparative tool here that allows you to compare those types of pitches. So again, very, very valuable information, especially for those that were like me, that are newer to the game, newer to baseball, don't necessarily understand all this information. This is something I've spent a good bit of time actually looking at and analyzing all these pitches, because some of these things I just simply didn't know. I mean, I knew the general basics of a fastball versus a slider versus a curveball. I knew the general basics of, you know, control pitchers versus break versus contact pitchers and things of that nature, but I didn't know all of these specifics, and this is incredibly valuable information. So I do hope that this is helpful to you guys in some way. These tools are extremely useful in the way that I am mentioning. And then last but not least, and honestly maybe the most important piece of information that I haven't discussed yet, is the actual written description of each pitch within the showcase here. So it's showing you, for example, I'm comparing a running fastball and a cutter. The running fastball tells me that it possesses lateral movement and is most effective against batters with the same handedness. So a right-handed pitcher versus a right-handed batter. And a cutter is a mix between a slider and a four-seam fastball in terms of velocity and lateral movement. So you get fantastic descriptors here of what each of these pitches is actually going to do for you. Again, we can see a four-seam fastball, almost always the fastest pitch in a pitcher's repertoire, and has little to no movement. In fact, one of the things that I have been most curious about is the difference between a four-seam fastball and a two-seam fastball. A two-seam fastball is a type of fastball that is held along the seams, which slows the pitch down while adding movement. So the difference there is that a four-seam fastball is generally going to be your high-speed pitch trying to blow it by a batter, whereas the two-seam fastball is going to slow it down, change up that velocity a little bit, and add additional movement that it may be harder to hit for a batter because of that additional movement that is harder to read. So you get very, very useful information here, and I did want to show this to you guys in the hopes that maybe it will help somebody out there that is not familiar with pitch types. It is incredibly useful information. It was intriguing to me, and like I said, I spent time looking at these pitches and trying to figure this stuff out. I'm going to continue to spend time looking at it because this is super helpful for knowing what type of pitchers you want to have in franchise mode or in Diamond Dynasty, what might work for you, what might not work for you, what do you want to utilize in Road to the Show. And ultimately, I think it is helpful, especially to those that are newer to baseball or newer to the game in general. So with all that being said, hopefully this was useful to you, and if it was, leave a like down below, comment, and subscribe. Let me know all of the information. Did you guys even know that this was here? Are you already, very experienced with different pitch types? Do you know what they all do, how they're all thrown? Let me know all that stuff down in the comment section, because like I said, I was a total noob whenever I started this game a few years back, and my knowledge has progressed immensely since then, and I'm hoping to get you guys as much knowledge about the game as possible as well. So, leave all that feedback down below. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys have a good one.